Hi, my name's Lydia Jenkinson. I am majoring in English for secondary education, so I'm on my way to hopefully become a high school English teacher. I'm here to talk about dispositions to teaching, based heavily on the disposition self-assessment that we had to take. And out of the dispositions provided in the assessment, I would say the ones that I possess the most strongly would be number one, that I'm very understanding and empathetic. I think this is probably the most important disposition to me for teachers to have, because I think if you can't get on level with your students and understand where they're coming from and you're just preaching to them, they're not going to learn as effectively as if you can give them a little bit of lenience while still maintaining firm expectations. Like, for example, I would expect that they all turn things in by a certain date, but I would make exceptions because I know that people are going through divorces and dealing with parents possibly being arrested or different traumas such as that, so they might not be able to get things done on time. And you have to understand that children are just little adults. We're constantly stressed on things throughout the day. I know while I'm at working, sometimes I can't always do my best because there's things that are bothering me. And I think having that understanding and that rapport built with your students where you can trust each other, they're more willing to do the work instead of just, if you're mad at them and you're like 0 because you didn't turn it in on time, then they're going to start giving up and they're not going to put in as much effort because they don't believe that you trust them and understand their potential. It's like you're just beating them down instead of building them up. So I think I'm very understanding, but at the same time, I do struggle with empathy just because I'm autistic. So I don't always understand other people's emotions, but it's almost like I'm more logical about things. I can understand that this is a situation, causes people to act this way. So I think being logical is almost sometimes helps you be more emotional, because you can understand patterns. When this happens, this needs to happen. So I can say when someone's acting this certain way, they might be dealing with this certain thing. So I need to address that and give them more freedom than, students not experiencing that same thing. And because I struggle with different mental illnesses, I understand that people learn differently. Not every student is going to respond in a favorable way based on just one specific learning style. So if you just lecture all the time, not every kid is going to grasp that as strongly. So you have to teach in a variety of ways and hope that every student gets their needs met individually. I'm very warm, and I encourage inquiry. I have learned a lot about different approaches to teaching. I'm a big believer in Montessori and Reggio, and Reggio is very big on the flight of ideas, which I want to implement into my classroom. I'm very big on social justice and equity, and I want to implement that in my classroom. I want to talk about different real-world issues to help kids be engaged to their environment and not just talk about historical events. It goes hand in hand, but I want to keep things relevant as well to keep students interested. And I'm very committed to teaching. It is my passion. I've known ever since I was a little kid that I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. So I think with that being my calling and my passion, I possess a certain fire and determination that some people might not have. And then this one kind of segues into things I need to work on. It's about with me being good at it, and it also is a weakness, is having sound judgment. I think that, like I was saying earlier, where I'm a little bit too logical, sometimes I might overthink a certain situation. So I might act with not enough empathy because I might be too logical about certain situation, but I also might be too emotional. I might say, oh, I feel so badly for this situation that I am going to be too lenient and not firm enough. So I think sometimes I'm too understanding to the point that it might be harmful. And understanding the value of community was one of the things on the assessment. I personally have struggled with that because I'm very introverted, so I'm very isolated. I don't involve myself in the community much, and I know I need to more. I think it's really important, but at the same time, not everybody is comfortable putting themselves out there in that way. So I need to work on bringing the value of community more into my life and into my teaching career. And then standards that a professional educator should have and attributes that they should have is the next thing. So a professional educator, I believe, should always be a role model for their students. They should act in the way that they want their students to act, both in the classroom and later in life. So I think some important attributes would be they should always be honest with their students. They should be reliable and consistent. So if you're always missing class or you're always late, that's going to model to your students that it's okay for them to do the same thing. And if they're going to get written up for it and get in trouble for being late and missing class too often, then why should you be able to call out all the time, you know? And it, not that that's allowed, because most workplaces will have some sort of policies regarding that, but I know that teachers get off easier because they're adults and they can get their excuses rectified more easily than students can. I've seen that a lot as a student. I've seen a lot of teachers that are never there, always having a substitute, so we didn't really learn much and we couldn't rely on them and depend on them for our education. That also can extend to outside the classroom with electronic communication. If you're never answering any of your students' questions and emails, you might make them feel like you don't care. I think you should show determination and persistence when you can't figure out something. Instead of just giving up, show that you're going to problem solve, and you should always be enthusiastic. Students don't want to come into class and see a teacher who's just lazy and on their phone all the time and not engaged in the material, and you have to make it seem like it's interesting. Even if you might be covering something that might be a little dry, you have to make it interesting to keep students engaged, because if you don't, that leads back to the last thing I said, if you don't care, they won't care either. And managing your expectations, you have to show that you might make exceptions, but you're not just going to let everything slide. You have to show rigor and show that we are going to do this, you are going to do this, and I expect it to be done. And I think very important is to be kind and gentle and understanding, like we've talked about so much before. You have to be adaptable. You have to show that you can be flexible when things go wrong, and also to have students respond to how you're teaching. If you show that something isn't working, listen to your student. If your students show you that something isn't working, listen to your students and adapt and do it differently. Because if they're telling you it's not working, or they're telling you they don't understand it a certain way, instead of just saying that's your problem and I'm not going to listen to you, show that you care and you want them to learn. Because what's the point of teaching if nobody's learning, is my perspective. And being patient, of course. And the next thing is how dispositions can positively and negatively influence students. So I have two experiences with this. A very negative experience I had was with my high school calculus teacher. She was basically how I was just describing in the last segment that I talked about, how she just taught one way, and if you didn't understand it, she said that you weren't trying hard enough, that you just needed to study more, that basically that it's your fault that you're not understanding it. So she had this disposition that she didn't believe in different learning styles. She wasn't understanding, she wasn't empathetic, she wasn't warm, she wasn't invested in equity. She believed in equality, which is, there's a big difference. She believed everybody gets the same thing instead of equity, where everyone gets what they individually need to bring them to the same level. So that negatively impacted me because it made me feel like there was something wrong with me. It made me depressed. It made me feel like I wasn't trying hard enough, because that's what she told me. It made me feel hopeless, like I was stupid, that I would never learn, that I would never be successful, because she told us, you won't be successful in college if you can't do this. You won't, if you don't learn discipline and blah, 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 to learn this material, then you're not going to be successful in life. Even if you're not going into a math field, she said, no matter what field you go into, if you can't learn these skills, you're not going to be successful. So that really made me feel hopeless, like I wouldn't have a good future just because I was struggling in this class. On the flip side, a positive experience I had with a teacher, she basically answered in all of the same ways that I did when we went over this assessment. She was one of the teachers I interviewed in the last week. And we both basically said that we strongly agreed with everything on the assessment. And so she's more similar to how I want to be as a teacher. She built me up instead of broke me down. She made me feel confident and hopeful and determined and excited about the future instead of afraid. So how I'm going to uphold these values in my classroom and follow the code of ethics is to stay educated on these standards, stay educated on code of ethics, laws, policies, and keep referring back to them and reviewing to make sure that I'm staying up to date with everything that's going on. And I have to practice this in my classroom, so refer back to it every time there's an issue. So if I think, until I get it memorized, if a situation arises and I'm like, that's explained in the code of ethics, I'll go back to the code of ethics. I'll say, how would they respond to this? Or think, how would Ms. Hopkins respond to this situation? And then I'll try to respond the same way. And how I'll encourage moral development in my classroom. This goes back to the idea of being a role model. I want to do everything that I expect my students to do. So I want to also be very clear about my values. I want to say, this is how we'll act in this classroom, having classroom rules, stuff like that. This is how we'll act in this classroom. I want you to act this way. Outside the classroom too, but I'm not outside the classroom, so I can't monitor and make sure that you're learning these values, but I want to foster it in my classroom and say, like, this is what we're going to do in here. This is how you should be behaving in school. Treating each other with respect, not cheating, keeping up with timelines, deadlines, things like that. So I want to hold people accountable when they don't follow the rules. I want to make sure that they understand, not that there's something wrong with them or that they are a failure because they turned in an assignment late or something like that, but I do want to have consequences and make them understand that it's not that they're incapable, it's that they made a poor choice. I want them to understand that they can do better, and I expect them to do better. So that's how I want to, help them develop accountability. And I want to build trust with my students and guide them so that they know that they can come to me, that it's a safe space where there will be no judgment. Also, going in hand with that is having a low tolerance for, I don't know the right word, but tomfoolery, I guess, breaking the rules. I want to have a low tolerance for that. I want to make sure that there's structure while still leniency at the same time, a good balance between, like, I understand what you need to do. I understand, for example, you might not have eaten all day. You want to have a snack. Okay. But you're not going to just... Sorry, there was a bit of a disruption. I want to have a low tolerance for not following the expectations, so that they know, like, if you just let things slide and slide and slide, then there's going to be no progress. I I want to encourage positive behaviors more than as much as I want to have consequences, I want to encourage positive behaviors more so. I want to commend people when they do things well and make sure that they know that I see what they're doing correctly instead of just drilling what they're doing wrong. That's it. Thank you.